Sky News' Unreliable Witness is back. There is a new twist in the Elanar Williams story. The girl who lied, jailed for fabricating evidence of a grooming gang. In court, it was suggested her diaries were fake, but we've got extracts, and if they were, somehow, within the fantasy, Elanar identified a real monster.
Farrell got branded to be a lying town. It's not. Grooming was happening here.
Follow Unreliable Witness in your podcast app.
Hi everyone, Niall Paterson here, the Sky News Daily, on its way in just a second. Last year, our podcast series Unreliable Witness investigated the story of a young woman who had lied about a grooming gang. Since then, well, there's been an almighty twist to that tale. Just a warning, the episode coming up next contains descriptions of sexual abuse and violence.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
At the height of lockdown, 19-year-old Elanar Williams claimed on social media she'd been abused and trafficked by an Asian grooming gang across the north of England. The rumours led to attacks on Asian men and Asian businesses in her hometown of Barrow-in-Furness. But then she was arrested for perverting the course of justice. It was a story Sky News home editor Jason Farrell and specialist producer Liz Lane followed in depth, and our podcast series Unreliable Witness detailed what really happened to Elanar Williams. A new episode is out now with an almighty twist. Jason and Liz are here. Jason, just begin by reminding us who Ellie actually is.
She's a 19-year-old girl at the time when she posts on Facebook in May 2020 that she has been the victim of an Asian grooming gang trafficking her from Barrow to other towns around the north of England. And we all know the story. What happened is, as she put that Facebook post up, her town of Barrow and other towns as well went into protest because they felt the police weren't doing anything. And what was actually happening was behind the scenes, the police were investigating her. And she was eventually convicted of perverting the course of justice, for lying, fabricating evidence, even inflicting wounds upon herself with a hammer, which they found video footage of her buying in Tesco. And she was found guilty of perverting the course of justice against 5 individuals.
Essentially, she'd made accusations against them. Those accusations were disproved.
Correct. It was proved that she had lied, that there were elements of it, and not just that she had lied, but she'd actually fabricated evidence. So text messages, for example, that she'd made up, that she'd gone to Blackpool pretending that she'd been trafficked when actually she'd stayed the night in a hotel.
And Liz, what happened to Ellie as a result of that?
She was jailed for 8.5 years. So that was in March 2023. She's actually out of prison now. She served 40% of her sentence. So she's now out of prison.
Whilst you were reporting this, there was something else going on in Barrow that you couldn't report on at the time, which directly links to Ellie.
So after we spoke to the family and we spoke to the men who'd been accused, and we went into the trial. And I think the podcast gives a really comprehensive view of all of those stories. But we also thought, well, there's other guys in the background here who aren't the 5 men who she was accused of lying about, but who she's clearly made allegations against. Who are these men? And as we looked into it, we found that some of them had other allegations against them.
The trial of the Mir Brothers ended last week with their sentencing. They are 3 brothers, originally from Leeds. The eldest is called Shahar Amran Mir, known as Jay. And then there is the middle brother called Shahar Alman Mir, known as Ali, and Shah Joman Mir, the youngest, known as Sarge. And they were jailed last week. Jay and Sarge were given life sentences. They were convicted of 62 offences between them, mainly serious sexual offences against children, including child rape and also intimidation and kidnap. And
what we found is that these 2 of these men were linked to Elanar Williams.
And how were these men linked?
So we were in the court for Elanar Williams' trial, and these names came up as people that she'd alleged had abused and trafficked her. But as well as that, we've also got a copy of some extracts of Elanar Williams' diary from late 2019. And for the first time, we can reveal the contents of those. And in those, in particular, one of these brothers, Sarge, is named 8 times over a 3-month period. And he is a person that she's clearly afraid of in this diary. And she talks about, having to do things for him. She clearly seems to be under his control. Now, it's possible this could also have been fabricated. The judge in her trial did say that she fabricated diaries and other things, but we do know from the metadata of it that it was written at the time, so it wasn't written after the event.
Just to be clear, this is before Sarge has been charged with the crimes, the historic crimes that he was eventually charged.
You say historic there. The crimes that these 3 were accused of date from when?
Between the 3 brothers from 1996 to 2010. So there was a 10-year gap then before they were charged with those crimes. Now, obviously, we don't know what happened between. We do know of 2 women who made allegations against one of them in that period. So far, one of those was no further action by the police. Another one is still under investigation. But what's really intriguing is that if you go through this diary, I'll just read you a little bit of an extract from Elanar's diary, is this name Sarge keeps popping up as someone who's quite controlling. So here we go. For about an hour later, someone was knocking on my door, checked my phone and had Snapchats of Zed. We're using Zed for anyone who's not someone we can name, saying Sarge needs me in Blackburn tomorrow. Said I had to get the train to Preston because they didn't know for definite where Sarge wanted me. He's often someone who seems to be in the background, but he's also at some parties. He's driving her home on one occasion. This is a guy who has just been sentenced to life for 40 counts of child sexual abuse. And this is a woman writing a diary who's been found guilty of fabricating stories about sexual abuse. That's the thing that's tricky here.
Another detail that has emerged from your reporting is that there is another individual in Ellie's diary that is of interest.
Yeah, let me just read you another. We'll call this guy C. Another extract, Monday, the 11th of November, 2019. When I got back, I met C. He smacked me, took off my necklace, said I wasn't trusted enough to be a golden girl. I went back with him and stayed with him. He calmed down and was all right with me after I said sorry. It's another one where he says, C knocking on my door, I answered it. He came in with Zed and hit me, said I disappointed him and let him down. They beat me. C has gone on to break into a woman's house 2 years later and sexually assault her. So 2 years after this was written. We also know that Elanar's mother wrote to the police in an email about C and Sarge in one single email that was also sent, again, before C had committed this crime, before Sarge had been charged with the crimes that he's now been found guilty of. Yeah, most of the people that Elanar was charged of perverting the course of justice against, the men that she'd made the allegations up about, are not mentioned in this diary at all. But this is a limited section of extracts of a diary leading up to the Facebook post that she made. So obviously we don't know the whole history of her diary keeping, but it is fair to say that within her diary are 2 now known convicted sex offenders.
So what's Elanar's family saying about this first and foremost? I mean, they presumably feel that there is more to be done.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to her sister before, Lucy, who herself witnessed things that she's convinced, yes, she knows that she lied. They accept that and that she was found guilty of that, and they don't dispute that, but they witnessed things themselves. So, for example, Lucy also witnessed this man, C, manhandling Ellie after she'd finished work at a nightclub, and there was an account of how some of Ellie's friends then challenged this man and he pulled out a knife. So we've also spoken to Ellie's former boss at the pub that she worked at, and he also describes intimidating behaviour by groups of men and how he and other colleagues would chaperone her to her next job.
These are all people who didn't give evidence in her trial. Yeah. But, it has to be said, a trial, is a very specific thing. If you're sat in a trial, you know that they focus on the specific evidence around certain events, which, is the focus of the trial. In fact, the jury even told, even if you think she's a victim of some form of child abuse, that doesn't mean she hasn't perverted the course of justice.
Of course,
right?
Of course not.
In this podcast, we look at everything. We really do take a broad brush. We speak to the family, we speak to the people that she's worked with, we speak to the men she accused. And we are trying to paint a picture of what's going on. This is a very, very complex story. Something's happened here where it's the most extraordinary case I've ever seen, really, in British criminal justice. A woman has accused a load of men of sexually assaulting her to the extent that she's prepared to smash her face into, hugely, extraordinary bruises. And this is over months. Like several times we see her in this condition with a battered eye. She's got scratches on her body. She's got bruises all over her body. We've seen reports from social services that some of the injuries to her are actually intimate. They're not for show. And she's often found in a drugged state as well. And so the police case in the case against Elanar Williams was that all of this was for show. All of it was put on. There is suggestions, certainly from psychological reports we've seen, that there was something in the background to Elanar Williams' life. And certainly one forensic psychologist found that they concluded that she was the victim of some form of child sexual abuse.
Yeah, and they had actually examined her medical records since she was born. And within that, looking at hospital records, because she'd been taken to A&E many times, medical professionals who thought that the injuries were not self-inflicted. There are just lots of unanswered questions still.
Lots of unanswered questions for you two. I'm just wondering how many unanswered questions for the police force involved. The Cumbria Police, I would imagine.
We've asked them for an interview. They have given us just a statement which essentially says that there was no connection between the investigations and the allegations that Elanar Williams made. They found no suggestion that any of the allegations she made against the Mir brothers were true, and that actually the allegations that she had made against these 5 men, were proved not just to be false, but actually she'd fabricated evidence to show that, to try and suggest that they were true. And, they say that the fact that they've convicted the Mir brothers of the crimes they've convicted them of shows that they take these kind of things very seriously. We did interview the Elanar Williams investigator back in 2023, and we knew this trial was coming up. So we did ask him about it at the time. And again, he said he knew about the trial, he knew it was coming up, and he said, but everything that she's said, we've looked into, and we've not found any evidence that backs up what she's saying. Okay. And those, just one last thing about, those victims from the historical case, incredibly brave. Yeah. They were intimidated. One of them was dragged off the street and told, if you speak to the police, you're going to be dead. Another one was told she was going to get a house burnt down if she spoke to the police. And these are young women. One of them abused from the age of 13. There are actually younger victims going back to Leeds from the age of 7. And they've come forward and they've got these guys prosecuted. So, incredibly brave of them to do that, to stand up in court when they know how dangerous these men are. And the judge, was applauded them for that and said to these men, they've hidden in plain sight and committed their crimes.
Well, as you say, the Unreliable Witness podcast, bringing together all of these different questions, these different strands. Jason, Liz, thanks very much.
Cumbria Police declined an interview about the Sarge case, but told us all allegations by Ellie Williams and her family were investigated thoroughly and there was no evidence of any involvement by the Mir brothers. They say allegations were proved to be lies with evidence fabricated in an attempt to support those lies, resulting in convictions for multiple offences of perverting the course of justice. They say the successful conviction of the Mir brothers shows how seriously they take offences of this nature in Cumbria, and they encourage victims to come forward.
And we approached the Mir brothers' lawyers, asking them to respond to the fresh allegations. At the time we're recording, we've had no response.
Now, to listen to the full series and this latest episode of Unreliable Witness, you can find it in your favourite podcast app or linked in this episode's description. You can also watch the Unreliable Witness documentary on the Sky News YouTube channel. The Daily is back on Monday.
The world is becoming increasingly complex and volatile. How can we make sense of it all?
I'm Richard Engel.
And I'm Yelda Hakim.
And we're the top international correspondents at NBC News and Sky News. And we present Sky News' latest podcast, The World. Each week, we'll cut through the noise to guide you through the week's global events and explain to you why what happens out there matters to you wherever you are.
Listen now to The World with Richard Engel and me, Yalda Hakim, wherever you get your podcasts.